Welcome to Grounded and Soaring, our new podcast that explores how we might raise healthy kids in a too often healthy world. I'm Sam Shapiro, head of school at Marin Montessori School. And today we're really excited to have a conversation about athleticism, sportsmanship, and mostly how do we cultivate in our kids a love of being physically active. And we've got some very exciting thought partners in this today. All three of them are actually dads at Marin Montessori. One of them is an employee here. And we're going to dive into this conversation together. We have Kelly Coffey, who's a parent of a couple of Marin Montessori students, but also the head of the women's soccer team at Dominican University. We also have Matt Stratton, who is our movement, sort of our PE teacher for elementary, and also directs our after school programming and our camp programming and our after school class programming. He's also the dad of a young daughter. And then we have Chase Fontaine, who's a parent of two Marin Montessori kids and a former Major League Baseball player. Chase was on the Atlanta Braves, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Kansas City Royals. Well, welcome, everybody. We're excited to dive on in. One of the ways into these conversations that I think is most helpful is to get personal about it. So you're all dads of kids from elementary age to primary toddler age. When you think about your kids, what are your goals for them around physical activity and sort of inspiring physical activity? And do you have specific goals around team sports as well?
Out of team sports specifically, building that confidence, creating healthy practice, work habits, building resiliency, character, and friendships, but most importantly, having fun, right? And learning you can put in the work, you can do things that may, not sound appealing or fun, but you get out there with your buddies and you grind on it, you work, you see some progress, and in turn, you look around one another and you're like, wow, we all went through this together. We went through this tricky situation. We came out of it better and stronger for it. And gee, by the way, we've nurtured some fantastic friendships and having fun while doing it. And that's the biggest one for me.
Because I was really inspired to hear you mention resilience and hard work, because it's so true, right? There's nothing as concrete as team sports to show us if we did it or didn't do it, right? We make it or we don't make it. And the evidence is very clear, right? It's not ambiguous. So it helps me build resilience around, okay, I didn't make that. I'm going to work harder and learn the skill and double down on my efforts. So I'm learning work ethic, the value of work ethic. I'm seeing progress toward goal. I'm failing and getting back up. Chase, I'm wondering, because, your career led to a professional career in baseball, and yet it was fueled by this joy. What's the secret sauce in both cultivating resilience and a strong work ethic and athleticism? What's the secret sauce for cultivating joy in that as well?
Culture.
Okay.
And culture is set at the top. Culture is set at the top. It's literally, the coach, the general manager, whoever's running the show behind the scenes. Kelly can speak to this. At Marin FC, you don't have people that are not capable, that are at the top of these organizations entrusted with developing these young people, right? So that is, obviously, the parents are along the lines of, are part of that, that culture. But just there's a lot of pressure on these coaches, but rightfully so. They're entrusted with getting these kids mentally to be able to go through this process.
When you say culture, what does that look like?
Yeah. So you have somebody, a coach or a leader that's there, that's basically like, hey, this isn't fun, and what you guys aren't going through right now, it's up to them to kind of get the herd to where they need to be. Right. So if you have a lot of negativity and a lot of, disdain for, lack of performance, these really, these young people and even high schoolers or in college, you can talk about this, and even professionally, they're going to kind of fall by the wayside and get distracted and kind of, emotion. The mental state will kind of pivot to this, start looking at negative thoughts and kind of pivoting from cohesiveness.
I think sports create a great opportunity and that culture piece to create a supportive environment, especially particularly for children, where they feel safe to express themselves, where they feel safe to make mistakes. Sports have this really amazing time where we get to practice failure over and over and over again, particularly when we're practicing, and then hopefully we can reduce those opportunities as we move into the game and the higher stake scenarios. But children get to understand that setbacks are part of the journey and that there's a lot to learn from those failures. And if you have that right culture, you can create an environment that helps the children thrive.
That's really incredible to think about too. That it's public failure usually, right? It's out there for everybody to see. So the culture piece of like really cheering on that you're exercising your mistake muscles here.
I think the word culture is a good one, and it can be used. And Chase mentioned the coaches, and I think you said general manager, but like for a Marin FC team, you've got a team manager and all these things. But it's also the parents of the kids, and I think what it comes down to in a foundation for sport and anything is how to get the children to enjoy what they're doing, and so that one, they want to come back and come to the next practice, come back next year to whatever sport they're playing, and then the next level to want to practice it at home, want to do extra, want to do a little bit more. Right. They start to realize the competitive element of things, like, wow, that team really just smacked us around and beat us pretty good. And a coach that can kind of convey, well, when you go home, here's some homework with the soccer ball. Here's some things to do to develop this, here's some, things you can do with baseball, or, your jump shots with basketball, or whatever it is. And to try to create that environment, it starts with the coach, but it also starts with, in the same way we do here at MMS. I just sat in on a Surrey and Minnie's a communication seminar, and was, how to communicate. And so communicating with the parents at these young ages on, what are the things that are important, and so that they're not focusing on winning, losing, how many goals you scored, but things like, did you enjoy that? Was that fun? Did you, what part of the game was enjoyable, or wow, that was a tough game. Was that hard when they scored that run in the last inning and you lost? And, how do you feel like you played in the game? What sorts of things, can you tell me about the game? And so it becomes, and I'll come back to this word a lot, the process. It comes back to the process of, cultivating the interest, and hopefully that leads to, the desire to become more of an expert, to want to practice on your own and do things on your own, which is that kind of love for the game. Like Chase talked about his buddies, and they love to play, and they just went out and played. And that organic love, like that's where you get, the special, the players that practice all the time on their own. And, that's how you get good at these things. And I think, you can, as parents, you can model all that. Those are all things you can model at home, and help with them. And so it's, because you're going to lose a lot of games. Yeah. You're going to have struggles. You're not going to be, at the younger ages, 6 months, 8 months on a team, everyone's born in the same year. That size difference can be massive, and that player can be that much bigger and better than you. It can be really disheartening for a younger, smaller child who's not is physically big and is gifted. And, understanding that, hey, there's you're going to catch up. You're going to have, work on the skills and work on the things and the enjoyment of the game. And it's gonna pay off eventually.
It's interesting to think about how joy can fuel a deep dedication and love for fitness and for sports.
I think an important part of that process piece, which Kelly really hit on the head, is also like celebrate as parents. We can really celebrate effort and not just outcomes. That really is like a way we can punctuate that process. Like we're praising the hard work, the determination, the grit the children are putting in the activities, whether that be their practice, whether that be their play, regardless of the results. especially at that youngest ages. Like celebrating the process and celebrating the effort is really, really important to fostering that lifelong learning.
It reminds me of Carol Dweck's work out of Stanford on growth mindset, the way you describe that, right? Which is that really what we want to celebrate is the effort. Wow, you ran down that field so I could see you trying so hard. That was awesome to see you try that hard, as opposed to focusing on you're such a great soccer player or you're such a great basketball player, avoiding those labels, right? And focusing on the effort.
Totally. I mean, and it's a slippery slope too. I mean, I can speak a little more on the later years, right? When your identity is rolled up into success in
Yeah.
sport. You know, that's a tough challenge to overcome, because there becomes a day in time when everyone kind of, gets to your level, and you're not going to be as successful as you were when maybe you were a young phenom to where you are in a high school or college. So if you're not having that same type of success, and you're so used to getting praised for the success that you had, it can lead to a lot, depression, loss of identity, all kinds of items. So again, Matt, that's an awesome point, and huge for and what my wife and I try and do with our child and our children, praising that effort as opposed to any or other successes that they have, right? Doesn't take much to just put in that effort. Anybody can put in effort. Anybody can try hard. So,
it's such an interesting point, right? You raised, because but I hadn't thought about that, Chase, but as a professional athlete, right? Of course, there is a time when my capacity is going to be outshined. Like, it's just inevitable. And so if my identity is completely wrapped up in that, in being the best and the highest performer, there's a massive blow coming at some point.
And it's not just sport, right? It's not just sport, it's academia. Oh, I mean, look at Stanford. I'm sure, 99% of that student body is their valedictorian. And when all together, it's like, wow, I'm not the smartest person in this room anymore.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a bit of a slippery slope to overcome.
And it seems like when we think about our own children, then what we really want, at least when I can also speak as a dad, like what I want for my sons is that they have fallen in love with growth. That it's, so if I reach the end of my career in something, or if I realize, wow, I'm not the most capable student at all anymore, my motivation is really around growing from that, and like, what's the next stage, or how do I meet this challenge?
Dr. Montessori had a good quote about that. It said, tennis, football, and the like give us the opportunity to acquire a fresh skill, and this sensation of enhancing our abilities is the true source of delight in the game.
That's it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that really, I mean, that boils down, like, you read all the stories about the, Lionel Messi or, whoever, and there's a love, and then there's I want to practice this. I want to do this all the time. And the same with a great writer, the same with a great musician, it's the same. And that it's that joy and that love. And there's probably somewhere deep in there, some great teacher, there's the parents helped foster it. They probably faced a bunch of adversities and things.
I'd actually kind of like to open up the conversation to you all around what you think is important for families to know. But one thing I'm thinking right now is that when our kids are little, like what we did a ton with our boys was do bike rides, because they enjoyed that. We do a bike ride out for breakfast. And it seems like we focus so far in the conversation on team sports. But in terms of physical activity, we are also wanting to cultivate a love for physical fitness and being active. I'm assuming the same principles apply, right? Which is not forcing a kind of we're going to go run 20 laps a day, if that's not what kids want. Is it finding also, if it's bouncing on trampolines or rollerblading, is that the principle in terms of just a physically active life?
I think it's modeling. You hit it right on the head, right? Your kids aren't riding their bikes by themselves to go to breakfast. Your partner or whomever's there is with them, showing, hey, we're doing this together. We're having fun. This is an enjoyable experience, and this is a core memory being made. And it's no different, I don't think, from teaching a kid a musical instrument to showing them how to kick a soccer ball or throw a frisbee. If you're doing it together and you're having fun and you're modeling that behavior, a kid's going to do what they want to do, right? But if it's going to help them kind of get over that curve of fearful to put in the effort. But if mom and dad are showing me I'm having fun, if my coach is having fun, like this could be fun. Let's give this a shot.
We have a choice, right? As parents, like we can steer them towards the couch and watching TV, like we make a lot of those choices, left to their own devices, it kind of goes the way we want to push it. And I agree, Chase. I have in my notes the word modeling written down too. And I think it's just something I feel like we try to normalize, because that is the end goal, to have to live in a healthy way, and exercise is a healthy piece. And as they start to get older, you can also start to tie in a little more like nutrition and kind of what you put in your body and what that looks like too. And, as they start doing more and more sports, whether it's, a sport that's an individual sport or a team sport, all those things are important pieces for that growth.
So folks, one thing that I've noticed both in Marin and we raise kids in the East Bay and communities similar to Marin is that there in these communities can be a pretty intense social pressure for our kids to specialize quickly in a team sport and to go hard. And I know this is a source of some controversy, this question of specialization or keeping it pretty open in general, letting our kids try many different sports. I'd love to know your thoughts on that question. Kelly, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I think you always have to start with like the element of enjoyment and fun. And, it's my opinion, you should give, the child as many sports experiences as they want. Do they want to try this? Do they want to try that? And, as much as humanly possible to juggle and provide that they want to play a couple of sports and do some different things. If they're enjoying it, if it's something they want to do, to give them those experiences. I think as you get a little bit older, you start to whittle that down. I know from my experience coaching women at the college level, it makes a big difference when they've played other sports. Just for some of the skills that they acquire because of the crossover in, say, for instance, heading a ball in soccer, judging a ball in the air. If they've played softball or basketball, right, they can judge, because they've thrown and caught, or shot and rebound, they can judge the flight of balls. It's just one example of the crossover that can help in other sports. I also think you see a high rate of burnout if you're just doing one sport, and the pressure and, to put them in at a young age to high pressure tournaments, like that just, whittles away at the fun factor. It just whittles away at the fun factor. And, I think at that point, it becomes counterproductive and, the kid ends up at 15 and they say, man, I don't want to do this anymore. That being said, the one caveat I'll give to it, I think if it's internally driven from the child, they at age 10 or something, they decide, hey, I don't want to do baseball anymore. I don't want to do basketball anymore. I just want to play soccer. Like, what else can I do? What else? And well, as long as I feel like that's a genuine joy and desire coming from them, internally driven from them, then go ahead.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I would comment too on that example you gave, Kelly. And it's not like the child or the young adult that decides I'm going to specialize and their parents decide they're going to specialize at a relatively young age. They're still doing other things to support that skill building on the soccer field. So they're not just playing soccer or whatever sport it is 100% of the time. They're working with a strength coach that's working on their agility and plyometrics and doing all this stuff to support, them as a well-rounded athlete on that playing field, whatever it may be. So, but again, it's totally dictated by that person's love and willingness to continue, to put the work in, to grow, to sacrifice all those other, opportunities for that love, right? And that's kind of, and that starts at the beginning, when we talked about it through culture, et cetera. But yeah, I think I have a very big problem with a child specializing in a sport or a young adult specializing in a sport, without having a voice, right? If it's one of these things where a coach is getting involved and is like, here's an example. You've got a freshman in high school and he's the best baseball player, of his freshman class, but he's really good at football. And he's really good at soccer. And the head coach, the varsity coach, basically tells that parent, if you want to play baseball, you got to only play baseball, right? And that happens, and it's really frustrating, because and selfishly, I understand why the coaches do it. They want access to their top resources, and when you have these crossovers, with high school sports or even middle school, where the basketball season leaks into the baseball season by a couple months and they don't have full access to their player, they're gonna get frustrated, and the child is the one that's getting left behind, right? The coach wants to keep their job, they want to, they want to keep, they have a obligation to fulfill for the school or whatever, right? So sometimes your child's best interest isn't their best interest, and that's tricky.
Is your objection, Chase, that as a freshman in high school, really this should be the opportune time to become well-rounded and to be able to continue to kind of pursue their joy in multimodal opportunities?
So I look at it from this standpoint, because and I know Kelly's probably experienced this too, is unless one, you're going to, make life-changing money, for yourself and your family, right? And meaning you're getting, recruited by professional teams or, whatever, as a young person, right? You're already on the pipeline. Or, you have the ability to get like a good scholarship to a good school and you love it, right? You have to have like those things, like the want and the love, like the child has to be able to articulate, I'm okay with sacrificing all this stuff because this is what I love. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to pursue. And I'm going 100 million miles an hour to achieve that. Right. And there's only a handful of those kids across the world. Right.
Right.
So I don't know what the percentage is, but it's definitely, less than 5% probably of the, the TAM of this child. And then the rest, I think it's doing them a disservice in life to, have them sacrifice all this stuff just to, appease a coach or maybe their parent or, someone else that's, kind of getting inside their ear.
Matt, you teach our movement program for elementary. And when you've studied the approach to teaching movement, can you tell us a little bit about sort of a Montessori approach to cultivating sportsmanship and also love of activity and games?
I really think the most important aspect there is understanding the whole child. These sports that we're playing offer us really great opportunities to test ourselves against others, but they also offer us great opportunities to acknowledge others for their abilities and for their shortcomings as well. Being able to hold your teammates accountable, being able to build your teammates up. I think there are really great opportunities in sports for that. At its most simple form, spirit of the game is you play to win, obviously, but in doing so, you have respect to your teammates, to your opponent, to yourself, and to the game that you're playing. And in its most dialed down form, you're someone that's great to play with, and you're someone that's great to play against. And I think we can nurture children that are able to do that. I think we'll be able to have a really successful competition.
I'm so glad you said that, because we've been focusing on the athlete or the individual themselves, but there is that, and all of you mentioned love of team, right? And part of that love of team, I'm sure, is celebrating other teammates' successes, but also helping boost them up when they're struggling.
One of the things we do for players that we're recruiting, we'll watch them in their warm-ups before the game. How do they relate to their coach? How do they relate to their teammates? And I also like to watch games when they're getting beat, how they respond to adversity, how they, or a bad call, like, how do they talk to the referee? How do they talk to their parents after the game? How's that relationship? And I think all those things are important as they go through to make sure that, their teammate makes a mistake. Do they jump on their teammate, or do they boost them up? Those sorts of things. And I think those come at a young age. Like, those are things that, need to be reinforced, starting with the coach, but also the parents. The parents model, when the parents yelling at a referee, the kid's going to yell at the referee. And so those are things that parents can, you can create that narrative within your child. They can't, their friend makes a mistake, or their teammate makes a mistake to lose the game, and they get home in the car and the dad's blaming the teammate. Well, the kid's going to blame the teammate, and so those are things that you can kind of control with your little young athlete in terms of, how do they treat other people, and just the same way we would in the classroom, when somebody makes a mistake or does.
What's striking me so much from this conversation, really, sports are such a training ground for the development of such powerfully beneficial mental habits.
Dr. Montessori really punctuated this with another quote I don't have to drop. Movement and physical activity is an essential factor in intellectual growth. Through movement, we can come in contact with external reality, and it is through these contexts we eventually acquire even abstract ideas.
This has been a really fantastic conversation. What a great brain trust we have here. I'm really grateful for you all taking your time and sharing your perspectives and expertise.
Thanks for setting it up, Sam. It was great. It was cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you all came.
Thanks for
having us.